I'd like to talk about collaborative negotiation. This is a skill that I teach a lot of my couples, and it's very helpful because there are quite a few topics that you need to negotiate on in a way that's more like teamwork. So there's a couple of skills required to collaboratively negotiate. First, you need to offer options for why you are trying to, what your point of view is. So for example, there are quite a few people who, when they come to the negotiation table as partners, they have one point of view and the other person has another point of view. But the problem with that is that basically you are only fighting for who's going to be right or wrong. It doesn't give you any wiggle room. So when you're negotiating, what you do is you bring a couple options to the table for how things can go. That way you're not too wed to the outcome and you are actually willing to negotiate. So that's the first step to good negotiating with your partner. The second one is actually to avoid hard no's. Essentially, there are some things in your life that really you are uncomfortable doing. And so like an example would be, in your relationship, if you really don't ever want to move away from home, like if that's just a hard no for you, you may need to be really honest with your partner about, I don't think I'd be willing to move from my home, but I would be willing to try to find a new job, help you to find a new job. So basically when you're negotiating, you are trying to steer away from anything that is a hard no so that you don't feel like you're making a huge sacrifice. And then a third part of what you need to do to be an effective negotiator is to move towards your yeses or your yeses with conditions. So you may not be willing to move very far from home, but you may be willing to move maybe 4 or 5 hours away. So rather than negotiating for moving all the way out to LA or all the way out to New York, depending on where you live in the country, you might negotiate instead and push the negotiation toward things you're more willing to negotiate for. Like, I'm willing to move a city away, or I'm willing to move away for a time, but not forever. So those are all yeses with conditions. And the more that you can point your partner to yeses with conditions, the happier you'll be with the outcome. And then finally, you need to make sure that you take a how can we approach. When it comes to everything in relationships, the truth is, a lot of people take a this is why we can't approach. So their partner brings something up to them and says, I would like it if we could spend some time skiing sometime this year. And the partner will then say, well, this is why we can't go skiing. We're busy with our kids, we're busy with our jobs, we just don't have time to get away, and so it's just not going to happen. That's actually not any sort of negotiation. That's just telling them, nope, this isn't going to happen, and I'm not willing to talk about it. If you take more of a how can we approach, then what happens is you'll get a partner who's less in a fighting stance and more willing to talk about a way to make it work for you. So the how can we approach is basically, well, let's talk about how we could go skiing. So you're not saying yes yet at all. You're just talking about what would be necessary to basically get there. And so you might say, well, I could see us going skiing if we made sure the kids were done with their school activities. That's a possibility. Or I could see us going skiing if we, say, save some money. You know, like we're really kind of strapped for finances right now. So we'd need a good $2 or $3 grand to get to that point. But either way, if you take a how can we approach, you have a partner who's more willing to negotiate with you versus the this is why we can't approach. And this skill works with not just with your relationships, but it works in business and it works in your personal life too. So if you want to get more of what you want, I definitely encourage you to become more of a collaborative negotiator.